Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Tabatabai, the COO and co-founder of ZUUM Transportation. Welcome to our Fireside Chat. Today, we have Cameron Geiger from Shenandoah Growers. Thanks for joining us, Cameron.
Hey, Matt, and hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Glad to have you on board here. Actually, Cameron, you're near and dear to us. We've known each other now, I don't know, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And recall the day we met in Northwest Arkansas. I think it was a plug and play event.
Yeah.
Just reflecting back on that day, you were senior vice president of Walmart.
Yeah. That was it. It seems like ages ago. So much has happened since then, not only in my professional life, but in our working relationship as well, Matt. There's a lot of things that we've been able to cover and do together that's been really exciting since then. But I remember those days too. They were a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. The world's changed too, hasn't it? In that
well, big time. Yeah, big time. There's that little thing called a pandemic that happened in between.
Oh, yeah. So I think since then, we really haven't gotten a chance to get together in person, but we definitely worked really closely together. So I want to make this fireside chat a little bit about your new organization, since you've been in different positions, but here in Shenandoah Growers, your new company, I feel like you guys are doing some really exciting stuff to tackle the logistics industry the right way. So that's why I thought it'd be an exciting conversation to have with you. And with that said, I just want to maybe start with just giving us a quick introduction about yourself and your background, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem. A little bit about me. I've been in the business world now for over 30 years. I was in the military, and then I left the military and joined a consulting firm and really got involved in supply chain technology. Did quite a few different consulting efforts across everything from strategy to industrial engineering, continuous improvement projects to IT implementations and whatnot. And it was a really good grounding in supply chain for consumer products primarily. Last effort that I did as a consultant was for Walmart, and it was actually designing and building their first e-commerce fulfillment center. And this is way back in the early 2000s. Spent 19 years at Walmart. A lot of that time was in the supply chain, everything from farm or field all the way to the consumer and everything in between. And so got a thorough grounding in it. And a good portion of that also was working with Walmart Transportation in the US, both Walmart's private fleet as well as their third-party relationships that they had, whether they were dedicated or truly on the spot market or what have you. And so that's really what immersed me, and we kind of joined as we were looking at ways to be more innovative with startups that were really pioneering in the industry and trying to do new things. So that's kind of what got me to where I am today. I left Walmart in January of 2020, so it's been a little bit over a year. Did a brief stint in private equity, and then I joined Shenandoah Growers officially on January 1st after consulting with them for a couple of months. So that's kind of my background. The cool thing about Shenandoah Growers and in this conversation, part of why we're having the fireside chat is, as the chief operating officer for Shenandoah Growers, I actually have a private fleet of my own now.
Cool, awesome. What would you say is the number one challenge you felt you need to address joining the organization?
I'm going to kind of approach that question obliquely and let you know one of the biggest challenges I had coming from Walmart, world's largest private organization, to a small startup that literally has revenue of, $140 million last year. It's a big jump, a big leap. And you go from being the big gorilla that everybody wants to work with to a small, scrappy company that's just trying to make it through as best they can. And so, my interaction in the startup community really helped me to think innovatively. And that was one of the challenges. I would say the big challenge that we have at Shenandoah Growers or other small startups like us is, how do you wrestle with the big dogs? How do you figure out how to leverage when you don't have the leverage to get better pricing or whatnot? One of the things that I've loved, obviously, Matt, working with ZUUM Transportation is, not only are you living through this, but when I came to you to have some of these conversations, you got immediately what I was talking about, which was hey, yeah, you know what? If we're going to do business with a small company, we're going to have to approach it a little bit differently. That also made me think about some of the conversations we've had, for instance, in the Jeffersonian dinner we had, I don't know, a couple months ago, about how to approach different challenges in the transportation industry, like the fragmentation between full truckload and LTL and perishable and ambient and whatnot. And that exercise, that thought exercise, really made me start to think differently about some of our primary challenges. So here's the problem we have. Our primary product is herbs. Okay. And when I say herbs, that's not code for cannabis. These days you can say cannabis, you don't have to use the code anymore. So we actually sell herbs to grocery stores. We don't have a lot of exposure to food service, which helped us during COVID. But grocery stores typically will sell fresh cut herbs in clamshells. And you can go to any store and you can go buy them. We happen to be the largest market share, even though we're a startup, in organic herbs. And more retailers are turning to organic products because their customers are. You look at that and go, okay, well, I've basically got an LTL problem here. But as a small company, LTL rates can be really, really expensive. So one of the things that Shenandoah Growers did to kind of combat that was to create their own fleet. And they did this before I got here. And at first it was the small straight trucks. And over time, as they got a little bit more sophisticated, they realized that if they could ever fill a larger truck, it's much more cost effective to put a 53-footer on the road than it is to have a whole bunch of straight trucks. You have to invest in, CDLA licenses and all of that, but still, it's a better business model, which is what all of the large, big dog transportation companies do. And so the first thing that they try to do to solve that was, okay, private fleet. But then we still had the problem with empty slots on the trailers. And so multi-stops came into play, and that's great. And then that precipitated, okay, well, I've still got an empty miles on the way back. I need something to fill my trailers. Is there some way to sell the empty space in our own trailer? Because quite frankly, we've got to go to Walmart and Kroger and Wegmans and Albertsons every day anyway. Why don't you fill the truck? And so we started thinking about that. And really the concept is, how do you turn a cost center into a profit center? Like you had said before. And that's where we started thinking about it is maybe there's a way for us to do that for other temperature controlled customers, even competitors of ours that have to go to that same location. And so that's really the idea that we kind of came up with to pursue.
That's great. And just to piggyback off of that, I mean, first of all, it's innovative and smart, right? To use all that extra space in that truck and try to take advantage of making that cost center into a revenue center, make some money off of it. You and I were talking about this, and I remember some numbers. I don't know if that was guesstimation, if that was something you had pulled from data that you guys had researched, but when you guys were looking into it, there was a large amount of money that you could potentially bring in terms of revenue to your organization, roughly speaking. I just wanted to hear from you, like when you guys did the study on what the potential opportunity was, how did you guys get to that conclusion that this is addressable market's pretty big?
Yeah, there's a couple things we looked at. And first of all, we didn't start with, hey, this is a great business model to go make a lot of money. What we looked at was, boy, it's costing us a lot of money to get this product to our customers, and we don't have a large margin. One way that we can reduce the cost is to get somebody else to pay for the truck that we're going to have to go pay for anyway. So, if you go and you work on the transportation spot market at all, you know how expensive transportation is right now. It's at a premium, and it's been running significantly higher the first half of this year and the last half of last year, and it's been more volatile. And there's been a more acute driver shortage in the last 9 months than we've seen in the last couple of years. Certainly, we saw a spike in 2017. It abated a little bit in 2018, kind of steadied out in 2019. In the back half of 2020, when COVID hit, and everybody's buying everything online, it's like every possible truck in the country is on the road already, and so this driver shortage has hit us again. And so the spot market is heavy. Well, we don't have enough trucks to move all of our stuff. we do about 85 to 90% on any given point in time we can do with our own private fleet. But we're having to go to the spot market. And it's really expensive to do that. And so it's also less reliable to get, to go hire somebody else's driver and hope that they remember how to do a multi-stop, or that they're going to give good customer service if you're going to be carrying somebody else's product. And so what we really thought of was, if there's a way to use the backhaul revenue to pay for our own private fleet and transportation, but we can also build a business model. This is where it started to come into the business model that allowed us to grow our private fleet so that we actually had enough capacity to be able to carry all of our loads with our private fleet. And we could justify that cost. It was a way to convince the rest of the company that this was a viable business model. That's when we started to think about this as, well, maybe there's an actual business here. We have enough space in some of our facilities to actually do a cross-dock operation. So what if I had a backhaul, I'm going to a Walmart distribution center and I pick up a load of peaches in Georgia or orchids in Texas or something that happens to be somewhere nearby, and I actually bring that back to my cross-dock, and then the next day, I basically transload that into my trucks that are going either back to Walmart or they're going to Kroger or somebody else who's buying that product. The key there, our next key was definitely using only the lanes that we're already driving. And so the next step in the business model is to say, this is all about leveraging my own cost. If it gets big enough, it can become a profit center. But right now, it's a profit center in the idea that it's actually neutralizing my cost. So my cost per mile of having a private fleet is significantly lower than being on the spot market. And it creates a perfect leverage. So that's kind of how it started. Then we started looking at addressable spend. And we're still trying to get the right numbers out of the various statistics that are available on the market. And some of them kind of compete with one another. They seem to be dated or controversial. But what we do know is, first of all, for every, right now with the driver shortage, we know that for every 10 loads that need to pick up, there's one driver available. And so with that level of demand, at least a portion of that is going to be perishable. And if I already have a truck going, then I'm one of those drivers.
Very cool. That's exciting. 10 loads, one driver. That's
oh yeah.
Many.
And sometimes it's actually been worse than that. As you got around November, December last year, I think the numbers were actually higher. But it is, there's plenty of constraint in the market right now.
Very cool. So I guess I wanted to segue into, for you guys, it's quite fascinating because I see you as a very innovative company in a lot of ways in your space. But now you're implementing I think, from the ground up, a new age of technology. So you have that ability to start fresh and look at the latest and greatest and sift through, I think there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of solutions. So that decision-making process is very interesting to me. Like, how does a Cameron Geiger, who's got a lot of weight on his shoulders right now to take this company to the next level and IPO and all the other things you have to do, how do you put together the right team first? And second, how do you truly look through all that smoke to find that right solution? I know we touched a little bit on it in the previous questions, but I want to dive in on this a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that Shenandoah Growers has to remember, and I think it's true of any company, is who are you really? Why do you exist? We certainly don't exist to be a transportation company. That's not how we started down solving this problem. This was a need that needed to be filled, and then we backed into hey, that's a pretty good business model, and it really complements what we are. But our vision, our reason for existence, is that we're really passionate about food that's organic, sustainable, and affordable. And that's what we're all about. That's why we work with the largest 18 of the 20 largest retailers in grocery, is because we're about organic, sustainable, affordable food. And we're solving for that, and we're doing it with innovative indoor agriculture technology. That's why we exist. Now, it's got to get from point A to point B, and that's really expensive, especially if you're primarily an LTL business and you're being charged very large fees for moving a pallet. to the point where you're like, okay, let's see if I can at least fill enough of the truck to get a full truckload, which is going to cost me less than a pallet. But this is where the fragmentation of the industry comes in, is you're either dealing with an LTL carrier or a full truckload carrier. Nobody's trying to solve our problem. What they're saying is I have a solution, try to solve your problem with my solution. And we found the same thing with software providers. So once we realized that we had a transportation problem that it was in our best benefit to solve, to be who we are, organic, sustainable, and affordable, then we started to look at who was interested in solving our problems, who was interested in actually, because when you're a small company, it's very different. When there's a lot of people that will knock on Walmart or Target or Amazon's door and listen because they'll do anything to get in. When you're a small company, customer service looks and feels a little bit different, which is, I got a solution, and typically the sales guy will listen to about the first half of your sentence, and then they'll go, I know, and they basically put your problem into a box. And so as soon as you quit talking, they go into their memorized pitch of, here's the black box that I've solved that will solve your problem. And so it doesn't feel the same way as it does when you're with a larger company. So working with a company that is listening and saying, this is the problem you're trying to solve, it doesn't necessarily fit into this box, but if we take these 2 or 3 things that we're doing, we could probably put something together for you that is exactly what you need. And I believe that's even more important for smaller, innovative companies like Shenandoah Growers, which is why, actually, Matt, one of the reasons that we've had such good dialogue over time is that's exactly how ZUUM Transportation's built their business. And so having a conversation with another group of innovative people who are not trying to fit your problem into a box, they're trying to help you solve the problem, is really, really important. And I've only got so many minutes in a day when you're trying to, you're trying to run a company that's literally trying to go to the next level and you're short-staffed. You need more people that are thinking about solving your problems and not just trying to sell you a solution.
I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit about like tech stuff, like what what do you guys look for when you're looking at a TMS, transportation management software?
What you need is something that works, and you need it to be dead simple. Our leaders in our business that run our transportation and logistics understand transportation and logistics, but they were not, growing up in their careers, the technology experts. They always worked with the technology experts. And so what we need are technology providers that, like a TMS, for instance, it's in the cloud. It is very basic for us to learn. The data integration, the ability to access things is very easy, and it's easy to train somebody that is not a technology person how to use the technology. It's that approach that we've all learned over the last 10, 12 years with our mobile phones and apps and whatnot that is actually true. That's what we need from a TMS, and historically TMSs are not built that way. So that would be kind of how I would answer that question. Simplicity of the technology and a focus on solving our problem is really where it comes from. Now, I've got a little bit more of a technology background than the average chief operating officer of a small product company. So I can talk that, but I don't have the time. And the people I'm working with don't have the expertise. And so it literally comes down to, I try to help them find the technology providers that are going to simplify the technology conversation for them so they can just state the problem and then work it together. Like I said before, it comes down to who's willing to listen and help us solve our problem that really matters to us. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that the smart technology providers will realize that's how to gain a lot of market share and a lot of customer loyalty, is to work with companies like Shenandoah Growers.
Yeah, thank you for giving that explanation. But I just still kind of look at the industry. I feel like we've gone through quite a bit of change, but there's a long way to go overall within logistics industry. It's almost like the last frontier to see proper technology adoption. Again, going through the core problem you touched on: fragmentation, low tech, legacy type of solutions, systems not talking to each other, no data flow, fragmented capacity. So it's going to take time to solve this problem, but the piece that's interesting to me is I feel like the last 2 years, especially, not only have we seen a lot of money go into the space to try to solve this, but we've actually seen the industry open up to this change, this digital revolution or digitization or whatever term you want to use for it. What's your take on that? How do you forecast the future in terms of innovation and logistics? And when you kind of look into a crystal ball and see the future in 5 years, what do you envision the changes that you're going to see the most that are going to happen within our space?
Um, well, first, I'd say that a lot of money has poured into a lot of industries. I think there is a lot of liquidity looking for an investment, something where I think that's true in a lot of industries. Certainly in transportation, that's true. And people see important logistical supply chain problems that need to be solved, and they're going after it. Some of them are approaching it on, I am really brilliant at artificial intelligence, machine learning, algorithms, whatever it happens to be. And I want to solve a big problem. Maybe it's world hunger, world peace. Maybe it's just trying to get from point A to point B, but whatever I envision as a big problem, I want to take my money and my brains and I want to solve it. The first thing you have to do is learn the industry. And typically, industry specialization slows the path of solving that problem. You can throw a lot of horsepower in it, but you don't really know the ins and outs of solving the problem. Then you've got people that approach it that are actually from the industry trying to solve the problem. And they augment their team with smart people, but they start with the problem they're trying to solve, not with the technology that can solve everything. And so I think you're going to see these two business models continue to compete in the marketplace. In something like transportation, I think the best opportunity that we have to solve it is with people who actually understand the transportation industry, but also have the technical chops to bring it. So it's that second model that I described, where you start with the true industry problems and not this conceptual, idea of what needs to be solved, but really understanding why. And again, that's where I think the nimble startup organizations that have started that way, whether they're technology companies like ZUUM Transportation or they're Shenandoah Growers trying to solve indoor agriculture, are the way to go. We have a lot of competitors in our space, for instance, who have done this. They've said, indoor ag is the answer to food insecurity. Indoor ag has a great environmental sustainability message. Both of those are absolutely true. That's part of why I'm in this business now. But a lot of folks have come with a lot of money wanting to solve food insecurity and environmental sustainability, but they don't really care about farming. And at the end of the day, when you're in indoor agriculture, it really helps if you're kind of a farming nerd and you care about the biology as much as you care about the information technology. The same thing holds true in transportation, in my opinion. I think the companies, they're going to take the pragmatic approach that remember two things. One is they understand the fundamentals of the business. And number two, they understand that there's a go-to-market strategy that must make you profitable. And it's not about the art of solving the problem. It's that literally solving a pragmatic real-world problem profitably that I believe is going to be the winning model. And that's where I think we're going to see the innovation and the winning investments go after the companies that follow that model.
What you said was really right on the marks. People from the space that actually understand technology is what's the missing piece. And having a good go-to-market strategy is that big differentiator. If you don't have a true plan to scale things, whether it's to get to a certain level of traction, which then ultimately turns into a profitable business model, or a profitable business model that gives you traction through revenue. Those two paths are typically missing with a lot of folks that are just trying to solve that problem.
Yep.
It's almost like an internal Six Sigma project versus a true problem solving. But anyway.
Well, I would say one thing about that, Matt. I think sometimes there is a role for some of those other players that are outside the industry to play. But I think the best role that they can play, they can be an investor or they can be an enabler. So, for instance, if we were to go out and build our own software platform, which we would never do, that's not the business we're in. I certainly wouldn't try to replicate Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services. I wouldn't do that. I'd build on their platforms, right? And I would then try to use whatever orchestration services they have with the application I have, because those are things that I'm not an expert in, and it's going to enable me to accelerate, and I can focus on my core business process. So I think there's things like that that can do, so that the experts in the business who can write applications and really understand how the problem is going to be solved, or are the people who are actually owning the assets that have to solve the problem, or the shipper who has to get something to point A to point B, the people that actually have skin in the game in the industry will solve the problem. Everybody else can enable that. But that's where, again, a partnership with a company like ZUUM Transportation, with somebody like Shenandoah Growers, or even working with a large, like Home Depot or a Walmart, I think that's where the marriage really comes in, because we have a shared problem to go solve.
That makes sense. And then that actually goes into kind of a theme that ZUUM's all about: collaboration and partnerships. So is Shenandoah working kind of on that same model? As we say it a lot. I'm sure you've heard us talk about collaboration. Maybe you're even sick of it because we use it so much. I'm kidding, but like at the core, I think what ZUUM has always tried to do is find you in order to build a platform that unites the industry and brings all parties together. You're not going to be able to build that all by yourself. You need to bring
Yes.
the industry together. You need to break down some of the walls, share data, bring technology partners together that might have areas of competition or co-opetition, is the way we look at it. But that's the strategy ZUUM kind of gone forward with, and has really helped us, I think, accelerate our growth, because we've brought people that most people in our industry would not want to work with and see as competitors. And together, we've gotten the 10x effect because we've both grown together. It's a huge opportunity pool. For you in your organization, have you guys seen that as well? Do you think within your industry that opportunity exists for collaboration?
I think in the transportation space, for us, the answer is yes. For instance, we have hauled our competition's produce to our customers. It was a revenue opportunity for us. It was our branded trailer that shows up at the thing, even though we're delivering at a discount than they would have gotten anywhere else. And so we're providing a service actually for our competition. And so that, co-opetition, we got something out of it, they got something out of it. We believe that the value we're going to get is going to be worth it. So that works. When it comes to indoor agriculture, and this is where I think you see a lot of the friction. So if you'll remember when we had the Jeffersonian dinner, and we were talking about collaboration and how could we defragment the market, there were several people at the table who said, I don't know that I'm really interested in it because my business model actually benefits from the fragmentation. I am the big gorilla in the room, and I've kind of built the whole industry that way, and I'm taking advantage of it. And so you're always going to run into that. But that's because that's their core business model. So when I look at indoor agriculture, do we look for partnerships and collaboration? You better believe it. I think most startups do. We're always looking for an innovative organic seed company that we can buy our seeds from. We have toyed with mixing our own soil, and we do it, but we've also gone to organic pre-mixed soil because there's a collaboration there. And so we constantly are looking at different things. There are only so many LED light manufacturers in the world. Certainly, we're going to work with somebody that we know is selling to our competition. We're willing to do things like that. We haven't gotten so far yet. We have done some mergers and acquisitions, which is the other way to create cooperation. But we're still looking for what we've been looking at in transportation, where we believe that there is an opportunity for many companies in transportation who are not setting the market to do things that will take advantage of what I call trapped capacity. And that's where I think transportation is unique in solving a problem that, there are people in the industry that it's in their best interest for that problem not to be solved. But I think for many of us, defragmenting and really using up that capacity shared will solve problems for both of us. And that's where our competition and us have been able to find a shared value.
Makes sense. So I wanted to touch on the pandemic because I know it's changed the world, and we started out talking about how it's changed our daily lives too. But I just wanted to hear how the pandemic has changed your world in the space you're in. You've seen an impact in your industry.
What we found going into COVID was we were as scared as everybody else that our business was going to go away. And we looked at the pay cuts and the layoffs and everything every other business did. And then that was mid-March, and then by early April to mid-April, everybody realized that there were certain fast food restaurants that were going to make it because they were able to get around COVID restrictions by having their drive-through or something else, and they could shut down their restaurant piece, but they could still do drive-through. And then the grocery stores. So we were fortunate that we did not have a huge exposure to the restaurant industry where all the restaurants shut down. And so that meant that we had a viable business model. But we even noticed that customers were more willing to buy something in a clamshell than a live plant. So we saw our living organic herbs dip because no one knew whether or not the coronavirus could be carried by a plant. And if they were going to cut it up, they were going to taste the virus somehow. You remember those early days. Nobody knew anything about how it was actually transmitted. And there were a lot of fears that people had, but they knew they could wipe off the clamshell and then they were going to have organic, and they felt better about that. So our fresh cut herbs in the clamshells took off pretty quickly. And it was a matter of dealing with the retailers. The problem that we ran into was those retailers had phenomenal sales. And when they have phenomenal sales, that means there's a lot more trucks backing up to their warehouses and their distribution centers than normal. And what we found was our dwell time, which is another problem we're now having to solve in transportation, went up through the roof, where they would hold us accountable for hitting our appointment time, and then they wouldn't unload us for 6-7 hours. And then we missed our next stop. So we've been trying to deal with the retailers as they try to solve their own supply chain problems. But the business overall, the sales have gone up because more people are buying at the grocery store and they're rediscovering that they like to cook.
So as our final question, I just wanted to ask you, what's next for Shenandoah Growers in the next, say, 12 months?
Well, we've got a lot of ambitions, like everybody in indoor agriculture environment. We have a research and development pipeline. We know that the herbs that we're growing today still have addressable market share. So we have the opportunity to enter into food service. We believe that our ability to scale our model in indoor agriculture means that we can actually be organic, sustainable, affordable. And by affordable, we also mean affordable and profitable. And that's where we think we differentiate. There's two things we believe besides our proprietary technology, which I'm obviously not going to talk about on the Fireside chat, but we have a couple of other things going for us. We have a great relationship with 18 of the top 20 retailers. And so we know, based upon our reliability and developing relationships over the years, that's something that we can do. But our technology also allows us to grow things other than herbs. So we can look at leafy greens, we can look at berries, we can look at mushrooms. There's so many things that will grow in the form factor and in the technology. And because we started with the biology and the chemistry, and we really know how to grow good plants, and then we've only added the technology that's necessary to grow the good plant and then to automate it so that we can scale. And approaching it that way, I believe, is the key to our explosive growth. What market we get into next, we're going to let our customers tell us that. Where do the Walmarts and the Krogers and the Wegmans of the world want Shenandoah Growers to play next? They believe in us. We're a reliable vendor for them, and we have great technology, and we solve for food insecurity, and we solve for environmental sustainability. That's a pretty compelling business model.
Cameron, thank you so much for your time today. That was a lot of valuable insight. As you know, we love working with you guys, Shenandoah Growers, and personally with Cameron Geiger. You've been an advisor, a mentor, and just an industry thought leader and expert. So we really appreciate you joining us today, and look forward to further discussions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. It was really a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you.